नमस्कार विद्यार्थी मित्रांनो, खूप सर्व विद्यार्थ्यांच्या डिमांड नंतर आपण आपली इंडियन पॉलिटीची बॅच इंग्लिशमध्ये सुरू करत आहोत. ही इंग्लिशमधील बॅच मी जवळपास सर्वच्या सर्व लक्ष्मीकांत कव्हर करण्याचा प्रयत्न केलेला आहे. ही इंग्लिश मीडियममधल्या बॅचची तुम्हाला एक नोट्ससुद्धा मिळेल आणि यासोबतच तुम्हाला या बॅचचे सर्वच्या सर्व व्हिडिओज, आपलं जे ज्ञानदीप अकॅडमीचा लाल कलरचा लोगो असणारा ॲप आहे, या लाल कलरचा लोगो असणाऱ्या ॲपवर तुम्हाला सर्वच्या सर्व बॅच मिळेल. मग या बॅचला ॲक्सेस किती असेल, व्हिडिओज केव्हा अपलोड केले जातील, तुम्ही ते व्हिडिओज किती दिवस पाहू शकता, या सर्व बाबतीतली सर्वच्या सर्व सूचना त्या ॲपवरच त्या ठिकाणी सूचना या सदरामध्ये तुम्हाला दिलेली आहे. तर मी तुम्हाला सर्वांना सुचवेल, ज्या विद्यार्थ्यांना इंग्लिश मीडियममधनं इंडियन पॉलिटीची बॅच हवी होती, तुम्ही ही बॅच नक्की जॉईन करा. तुमच्या मित्रांसोबत सुद्धा शेअर करा. यामध्ये मी तुम्हाला प्रत्येक कन्सेप्ट सांगण्याचा प्रयत्न तर केला आहेच, मात्र या कन्सेप्टच्या सोबतच त्या टॉपिकशी निगडीत जो महत्त्वाचा कंटेंट आहे आणि त्या टॉपिकशी निगडीत जे महत्त्वाचा फॅक्च्युअल डेटा आहे, जो तुमच्या परीक्षेसाठी अत्यंत उपयुक्त असतो, हा सर्वच्या सर्व डेटा सुद्धा मी त्या ठिकाणी देण्याचा प्रयत्न केलेला आहे. सो तुम्हाला सर्वांना विनंती की बॅच शेअर करा आणि जॉईन करा. थँक्यू. हॅलो फ्रेंड्स, वेलकम यू ऑल टू ज्ञानदीप अकॅडमी. टुडे again we are going to start one of the very interesting topic of the chapter we are studying, our parliament. Today we are going to discuss some important points about Lok Sabha, about its qualification, about disqualification, and all those points. So let's start with this point. Now see, as we have seen, in case of parliament, Indian parliament is a legislature. It is composed of two houses. One is Lok Sabha, it is called as House of People. Second is Rajya Sabha, which is called as Council of the States. Lok Sabha is also called as lower house. Lok Sabha, lower house. Rajya Sabha is called as upper house. Clear? We have seen these simplest things. Now, one important thing, composition of Lok Sabha we are going to study. Here Lok Sabha is Lok Sabha is called as lower house or house of the people. Now, what is the composition of Lok Sabha? It means who should be or who can be the members of Lok Sabha as per the constitution. As per the constitution, 552 is the strength of Lok Sabha. In these 552 members, 530 members are elected from various states, 20 members must be elected from various union territories, and 2 members will be from Anglo-Indian community. These 2 members will not be elected. These 2 members of Anglo-Indian community will be nominated by President of India. Clear? Now this makes one point very, very clear. It means Lok Sabha has elected members as well as nominated members. But 104th Constitutional Amendment Act 104, 104th Constitutional Amendment Act, it abolished the reservation given to Anglo-Indian community. This reservation to Anglo-Indian community was given by Article 331. This reservation has been abolished by 104th Constitutional Amendment Act. It means right now Anglo-Indian community is not represented on the Lok Sabha. Then question comes, who are these Anglo-Indian community members? Who can be called as Anglo-Indian community members? A very simple answer is there to this question. See, when we got independence, at that time, many Britishers, they preferred to stay back in India. But when they were thinking about staying in India, at that time, they had this small fear in mind, since Britishers ruled us for more than 150 years. They had this fear in mind that a feeling of vengeance, a feeling of repentance might be there in the minds of Indians, and this should not backlash on the lives and personal liberties of Britishers. So, a simple and what we can say a gesture was given towards these members of Anglo-Indian community that they shall be given due representation in Lok Sabha to express their grievances, to put their demands, to put their aspirations, and to put their requirement in the Indian legislature. That's why this reservation to 2 members of Anglo-Indian community was given in Lok Sabha. So the Britishers who preferred to stay in India and their next generations are called as Anglo-Indian community. So the descendants of the Britishers and their next generations who preferred to stay in India are called as Anglo-Indian community. They were given reservation by Indian Constitution under Article 331, this reservation has been abolished by 104th Amendment Act. They were given nomination. To be very precise, they were given nomination. So right now, Anglo-Indian community do not have any nominated members on the Lok Sabha. So what is the current status? Currently, Indian Lok Sabha is composed of 543 members from various states and union territories. Right? It involves 530 members from various states and 13 members from union territories. So this is the current status. This is the current strength of Indian Lok Sabha. Why we do not have complete strength? It is a altogether different story that we'll try to understand. Now coming to what we have seen, this Lok Sabha has representation from various states and union territories, and 2 Anglo-Indian community members were there, but this nomination of 2 Anglo-Indian community members has been abolished by 104th Amendment Act. It means right now Lok Sabha has election of only states and union territories. Then comes the big question, how these members of various states are elected on the Lok Sabha. We are going to study this point. It means representation of various states in the Lok Sabha is the point under consideration. How members from various states are represented on the Lok Sabha is a question of consideration. So first point you have to remember, the members of the Lok Sabha who are elected from various states, they are elected through direct election. Clear? Members, now how the line will be, members from various states are elected directly on the Lok Sabha. So there is direct election to members of various states in the Lok Sabha. Then there are territorial constituencies, जिसे हम क्या कहते हैं, जिसे हम मतदान क्षेत्र कहते हैं, मतदार क्षेत्र कहते हैं, या which is called as मतदार संघ. That is territorial constituencies, क्षेत्रीय मतदार संघ. So the 2 important points, members from various states are elected in the Lok Sabha through direct election and through territorial constituencies. Now, how these territorial constituencies are made and how representation is given to various states, we will move further. Now, when we say about direct election, it has 2 important components. One is Article 326, which talks about universal adult franchise. Second is Article 325, which talks about no discrimination. And third important point is about 61st Constitutional Amendment Act 1988. First, we'll try to understand Article 326. What it says? It talks about universal adult franchise. What it means? It means every citizen of India who has completed 18 years of age is eligible to cast his or her vote in the Lok Sabha elections. Every citizen, I am not using word every person, I am using the word every citizen. It means in Lok Sabha, only citizens of India have the right to cast his or her vote. All persons do not have right to vote in the Lok Sabha. Right? So Article 326 says, every citizen of India who has completed 18 years of age is eligible to vote in Lok Sabha election. And this is called as universal. Universal means everyone is applicable to this thing. Adult. Adult means those who have completed 18 years of age. Franchise, it means right to vote. Universal, every citizen. Adult who has completed 18 years of age. Franchise, right to choice. What is meaning of franchise? It means right to choice. So, every citizen of India who has completed 18 years of age has the right to vote in Indian election. It is Article 326. Then comes Article 325. Now, don't go in the details of these larger lines. Just remember what Article 325 says or what is the theme of Article 325. Article 325 says, there shall be no discrimination. A simple term. Article 325 says, there shall be no discrimination while adding a person's name into electoral list. Electoral list means voters list. No person shall be discriminated while adding his or her name in voters list after completing 18 years of age based on race, religion, caste, sex or place of birth. It means there will be no discrimination. No person shall be excluded from that voters list. Every person shall have equal right to get enlisted in that voters list. So 325 right to vote, 326 right to vote, Article 325 right to get listed in that voters list without any discrimination. Listen, no person to be ineligible. It means no person shall be made ineligible for inclusion in or to claim to be included in a special electoral roll on grounds of religion, race, caste or sex. That is gender. On these things, no person shall be ineligible to be added into the list. Then comes 61st Amendment Act 1988. Its implementation started in the year 1989, but Act belongs to 1988. 61st Amendment Act, what it says? It says, this Amendment Act, it reduced the voting age from 21 years to 18 years. Earlier, means before this Amendment Act, only people who had completed 21 years of age were eligible for the vote. This 61st Amendment Act, it reduced voting age from 21 years to 18 years. Clear? It reduced voting age from 21 years to 18 years. This is a very simple thing. Clear? This is the most simplest thing to understand, right? Also, this 61st Amendment Act, it increased the number of election commissioner from 1 to 3. This is the point you have to remember. The 61st Amendment Act, it increased the voting age from 1 year to, increased the number of commissioners from 1 to 3 years. Clear these 3 points. Article 326, universal adult franchise. Article 325, no discrimination. And 61st Constitutional Amendment Act, which reduced voting age from 21 years to 18 years, also which increased the number of election commissioners from 1 to 3. Then comes second point, how various union territories are represented. As we have seen, how states are represented through direct election based on territorial constituencies. Then what is the way of representation of union territories? We have seen 530 members shall be represented from states and 20 members shall be represented from union territories. So for 530 we have seen just few minutes back. Now what about these 20 members? How these 20 members shall be elected to Lok Sabha? Now here one important point is there. Now just listen very carefully this difference. About these 530 members, Constitution has specifically said that these 530 members from the state shall be elected by direct election. It is said by Constitution. It was mentioned in the Constitution very specifically. But about these 20 members, it was not mentioned specifically in the Constitution. About the representation of members of union territories in the Lok Sabha, Constitution had given authority to Parliament to decide how to elect these 20 members to union territories. Clear? So if you get a question like in MCQ, Constitution said members of union territories shall be elected directly to the Lok Sabha, and Constitution said members of union territories shall not be elected directly to the Lok Sabha. Both these two statements are wrong, because Constitution has nowhere specified the representation of union territories to the Lok Sabha, or the manner of representation of union territories to the Lok Sabha was not specified by the Constitution. Constitution had given this right to Parliament, and Parliament made an act about these 20 members, and this act said that there shall be direct election. Clear this point? So here Constitution has specifically said, in case of states, Constitution has specifically said that these 530 members should be elected directly. But about these 20 members, Constitution has not said anything directly. Constitution has given authority to the union territory. Clear this point? Now, there are direct election. How it is there? See, Constitution has authorized Parliament to decide the matter or the manner of representation of various union territories in the Lok Sabha. Constitution has authorized whom? It has authorized Parliament. And for this sake, Parliament has made an act. What is the name of that act? Name of the act is Union Territories Direct Election to the House of the People Act 1965. Parliament has made an act and Parliament said that there shall be direct election to the House of the People from Union Territories. That's why there is direct election. It means Article 325 and Article 326, which is applicable to states, is as it is applicable to Union Territories. Clear this point? Very important point is there. It means if I make two statements, Constitution said the members from various states shall be elected directly to Lok Sabha. It is true. But if I say Constitution says members of Union Territory shall be elected directly to the Lok Sabha, it is not true. Though they are elected directly, but it is not said by Constitution. It is said by Parliament. You have to look at the minute things to clear these examination, where we commit normally mistake, and it is very difficult to understand these small differences which makes big differences in result. So you have to take this care. Clear? So these two statements are very, very essential. So in simple terms, Article 325 and Article 326 is also applicable to Union Territories, but not based on the recommendation of Constitution, but it is based on the law made by Parliament. Made by Parliament. What is that law? Union Territories Direct Election to the House of the People Act 1965. Then about nominated members. So a nomination for 2 members of Anglo-Indian community was given under Article 331. We have seen the definition of Anglo-Indian members. This nomination given to Anglo-Indian community member is abolished by 104th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2019. Anglo-Indian community member. Right now there is no nomination. There could be a representation to Anglo-Indian community through direct election, right? But there is no nomination in the Lok Sabha to this specific category of Anglo-Indian community. It means before 44th Amendment Act, Lok Sabha had elected as well as nominated members. But after 104th Amendment Act, Lok Sabha have only elected members. Lok Sabha do not have nominated members, because this nomination of members to the Lok Sabha has been abolished by 104th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2019. Clear? Simple. President used to nominate 2 members. Originally it was there till 1960s only. Then it was increased to 2010 by 79th Amendment Act of 1999, and 95th Amendment Act increased it till 2020, which is abolished by 104th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2019. So here remember, Anglo-Indian community members do not have any representation, do not have nomination. They could have representation through direct election, through open election, but they do not have nomination from the president in the Lok Sabha. Now, let's go for the system of election to Lok Sabha. How members of Lok Sabha are being elected. Let's go for it. Very interesting point is there. Territorial constituencies are there. Now, if you look around you, you'll realize that you belong to a particular Lok Sabha constituency. You belong to a particular Lok Sabha constituency. Like Pune Lok Sabha constituency is there, Pimpri Chinchwad Lok Sabha constituency is there, Baramati is there, Tirunelveli is there, Delhi is there, Chandni Chowk is there. So all these are territorial constituencies, which is called as Matdan Kshetra ya Matdar Sangh ya territorial constituencies. Then how to formulate these territorial constituencies? Right? What is the basis for formulation of these territorial constituencies? Also, you might have seen in one of the statement, the party president of Maharashtra Navnirman Sena, Mr. Rajji Thakre, he said that he will be the kingmaker in state legislative assembly elections. Why he said so? It has a specific reason. Now, we'll try to understand that reason. Now, see, let's think about the Maharashtra. Clear? Suppose this is a schematic map of Maharashtra. Right. Now, you'll realize that this is the belt which has very dense population. This belt has very dense population. I'm just giving an example of state legislative assembly. It is same applicable to Lok Sabha as well as state legislative assembly. Now see, what happens? Maharashtra State Assembly has total 288 seats. It has total 288 seats. Clear. But out of these 288 seats, in this entire belt of only Mumbai region, I am not talking about Sindhudurga, Ratnagiri, no region. I am just talking about Mumbai, Kalyan, Thane, Raigad, Mumbai Upanagar, Mumbai city. I am just talking about these region and certain regions. Out of these 288 seats, almost 80 to 85 seats belongs to this region. It means if almost more than 1/3 seats goes to these few districts, it makes this North Maharashtra, Marathwada and Vidarbha irrelevant in terms of power gain. Why it is so? Because it is based on territorial constituencies. Clear? Or many times it is said that anyone who wants to become Prime Minister of India, he has to contest his election from Uttar Pradesh. Why it is so? Because if you go for the number of or the strength of various states in the Lok Sabha, you will realize that Uttar Pradesh has almost 80 plus seats in Lok Sabha. Obviously, one single state is deciding the things. Why it is so? Because how many seats should be allocated to a particular state is based on this particular ratio. What is that ratio? Number of seats allotted divided by population of these states. This ratio should be same for all states. This ratio should be same for all states. What is the significance of this ratio? Let us say, let's look, we will go for this. Suppose our Lok Sabha has total 100 seats. It is an imaginary figure. Suppose our Lok Sabha has total 100 seats. And we have 4 states are there. One is Tamil Nadu, second is Maharashtra, third is UP and fourth one is Bihar. Now, suppose the population of Tamil Nadu is 20,000. Population of Maharashtra is, let us say, 40,000. Then population of UP is, let us say, 40,000 or let us say 50,000. And 90. Okay, I will change it. Let us say population of Maharashtra is 30,000. Right? And Tamil Nadu is 10,000. And Bihar has population of 10,000. So it is, let us say, total population of India is 1 lakh. 20,000 population, sorry, 10,000 population of Tamil Nadu. Oh, sorry, 20. I will write it once again. Just I will make changes. Suppose 4 states are there. One is Tamil Nadu, second is Maharashtra, third one is UP and fourth one is West Bengal. Let us say Tamil Nadu has total population of 10,000 people. Maharashtra has total population of 20,000 people. West Bengal has total population of 20,000 people. Right? And Uttar Pradesh has total population of, let us say, 50,000 people. Then what is the formula that we want to have? Number of seats allotted divided by population of the state. This ratio should be same for all states. Then how to divide these 100 seats so that the ratio will be same? Now, if out of these 100 seats, if I give 10 seats to Tamil Nadu, 20 seats to Maharashtra, 50 seats to Uttar Pradesh and again 20 seats to Maharashtra, then the ratio will be same. Now see, this 0 gone, 1 by 1000, this is gone, 1 by 1000, this is gone, 1 by 1000 and this also gone 1 by 1000. So the ratio comes 1 by 1000. Here also 1 by 1000. Here also 1 by 1000 and here also 1 by 1000. Clear? So this is the ratio. What it means? That ratio is all for all states. It means this one member of parliament is representing how many members? It is representing 1000 population. So it makes it very, very clear that the allocation of seats to various states is based on, it is based upon population of that state. It is based upon the population of the state. This is a very simple thing. That's why ratio, number of seats allotted divided by population of the states. So this ratio should be same for all states. This gave 50 seats to Uttar Pradesh, 20 seats to Maharashtra, 10 seats to Tamil Nadu and 10 seats to West Bengal. Now this obviously is going to create a kind of resentment among the minds of the people. Why? Because West Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, they will say we are paying huge amount of taxes. We are working on education. We are working on health. We are working on infrastructure. We are working on betterment of standard of life, and still we are getting very less representation in Lok Sabha. And Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, all these states, they are not working on any of these things, and there is huge population, and they are getting more and better say in the Lok Sabha. So obviously, it is going to create a sense of regionalism. It is going to create a sense of a feeling of a simple feeling of what we can say resentment among the South Indian states. Clear. So this we are going to address in few minutes. So clear, you get how the seats are allocated to various states. Seats are allocated to various states based on the population. And this is the reason why in case of Maharashtra Assembly, this entire belt of Mumbai and surrounding regions have got almost 80 plus seats, and that's why Raj Thackeray ji said that he could be the kingmaker. Why? Getting 30 to 35 seats in these regions is not difficult thing, and once he gets those seats, he will have upper hand in these regions. Clear? No. This ratio is the basis for allocation of seats in the Lok Sabha. It does not apply to states having population less than 6 million. I will star mark this point. It is important. Remember it from exam point of view. Those states who are having population less than 6 million, this point is not applicable. Population, which figures should be used? So the figures of preceding census, of which relevant figures have been published, should be taken into consideration. Now, as population keep on moving from one region to another region, as population keep on increasing in a region and another region it goes down, so Constitution said that after every census, readjustment in seats and readjustment in territorial constituencies should be made after every census. Two things must be readjusted after every census. One is number of seats allocated, and second, territorial constituencies must be these two things must be changed after every census. This is called as delimitation of constituencies. I will use the word. This is called as delimitation of the constituencies. Readjustment is called as delimitation of constituencies. After every census, for allocation of seats in the Lok Sabha, division of each states into various territorial constituencies. Now, who is going to decide this delimitation? It is Parliament is empowered to determine authority and manner. How delimitation of seats and territorial constituencies should be made, this authority rests in the hands of Parliament. Parliament will decide how to go for this delimitation and what is the manner. So, Parliament has enacted various delimitation commissions 4 times till today. One is in 1952, then 1962, 1972, and finally in 2002. Why this gap? This is an interesting story that we are going to study. Now, I am going to tell you a story. A simple story is there. Don't go based on the fact, just try to understand what I am saying. See, it was said by world ruler that India is an impregnable country. Means you cannot win India from land side. And it is surrounded by ocean on 3 sides. That's why it is called as Indian Peninsula. Any geographical region which is surrounded water on 3 sides, it is called as peninsula. So Indian Peninsula was impregnable. Indian subcontinent was impregnable. Why? Because difficult terrain from the side of Himalaya, from the side, the overbulging flow of Indus Valley, Tibet Plateau. So it was very difficult. Then what happened? Then through various ways, the attackers or the rulers from Persia, from Tibet, from Mongolia, from far-flung Greece, Greco-Roman rulers, they entered into India and they fought with the India. At that time, Indian rulers or the rulers in the Indian subcontinent, they were not very strong in terms of war tactics and war technique because they had to fight amongst themselves. See, when you are fighting, when you are competing amongst you, at that time your skill, your technique, your machinery or equipment are very primitive. Same happened. When this Greco-Roman and Persian and Mongolian and these people invaded India, it was very difficult for the original Indians to fight with them, and they started shifting from northern region to southern region. Then what happened? Over a time period, these southern people who inhabited entire India, they got concentrated into the small that peninsular region of India. That is 4 South Indian states. If you look at the physiology of Indian people, you will realize that from south, there is stark difference in the middle and there is stark difference in the north. Very large difference is there in your physiology, in your look, in your hair, in your nose, in your color and your oily skin. The large differences are there. It is true that these differences are there. Why? Because these people shifted. So, the people who are in south, they are called as Dravidians. And the people who are in north, they are called as Aryans. It is racial classification. Now, Dravidians says that we are the original inhabitant of Indian subcontinent. And these Aryans, they invaded us, they came over here and they claimed, they encroached upon the Indian land. And this fight is going on. This was an old fight. Now, what happens in current situation? In current situation, Uttar Pradesh gets almost 80 seats in Lok Sabha. Right? Tamil Nadu gets 39 seats in Lok Sabha. Now, this is a point of question. Now, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, one of the most advanced states, they will say, we are working on education, we are working on health, infrastructure, we are working for our people, we are paying regular taxes, crime rate is also lower. Then, why we have less representation in Lok Sabha? Why our money should be spent on the Uttar Pradesh or Bihar or all other backward states? Why it's so? And it led to a kind of conflict between northern states and southern states. This conflict was there. Now, what happens here when this conflict was rising? And why this conflict was rising? Because with increase in the population, the number of seats allocated to Uttar Pradesh and Bihar was increasing like anything. And it is obvious that if Uttar Pradesh has 80 seats and Bihar has 40 seats, out of 545 seats, these two states have 125 seats. Right? Almost 25 seats are backed by only those two states with least development, with more backwardness. And this was the point of contention which led to linguistic conflict, which led to regionalism, which led to many kind of conflict between these states. And also that question of whether Hindi should be imposed on South Indian states or not, this again create a confusion. And when it was seen that these tensions could escalate into a federal conflict, Indira Gandhi made a very bold decision through 42nd Amendment Act. Indira Gandhi said, whatever seats that were allocated to various states based on 1971 census will not be changed for till 2001. We are not going to change these seats till 2001. Till the year 2000. What 42nd Amendment Act said, Indira Gandhi froze the allocation of seats in Lok Sabha till year 2000 at 1971 census level. So there is no question. Or what would have happened right now? Right now, Uttar Pradesh would have 150 seats in Lok Sabha. Bihar would have 75 seats in Lok Sabha. And other states will have 10, 20, 15, 17 like this. And this would have completely damaged the federal equilibrium. This would have completely damaged federal balance. That's why Indira Gandhi made this bold decision to stop this federal conflict and stop this regionalism, linguism and all kinds of conflict. She said, from now onwards, the number of seats allocated to various states, we are going to freeze these number of seats till year 2000. And the numbers will be allocated based on which census? It will be allocated based on 1971 census. Then came 84th Amendment Act in 2001. This Amendment Act also, it said that this ban on reallocation of seats has been extended for 25 years. Remember this number, 25 years. It means they said whatever be the current status of population of various states, the number of seats given to various states, allocated to various states, we are not going to change the number of seats for next 25 years. That is up to the year 2026. And 87th Amendment Act said for this particular readjustment, census of 2001 should be used. Clear? You get an idea about this regional conflict, or rather I would use the word racial conflict. It is but obvious that if I'm working very hard on my state and if I'm getting less funds, see about member of parliament local area development fund, the state who has higher number of seats will get higher funds. So why from my taxes money, my money should be given to the other states who are not giving more taxes? Clear? So this is the objection. So these three important amendments acts are there. 42nd Amendment Act 1976, which was brought by Indira Gandhi, which is also called as mini constitution. It froze the allocation of seats in the Lok Sabha till the year 2000 at 1971. 84th Amendment Act 2001, this ban on reallocation has been increased for next 25 years till the year 2026. Now next important, I hope you got what I wanted to say. A thing is there that in online lectures I cannot use many more examples, as these examples could not be digested by everyone. So I kept these examples at lower level, but these points are very, very important. These racial conflicts are very, very important, and allocation of seats are also very, very important. Now, reservation of seats for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe in Lok Sabha. Now here important point, the reservation of seats for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe in Lok Sabha is based on the population. It is based on the population of that scheduled caste and scheduled tribe community in that state. Originally, this reservation was given only for 10 years. That is up to 1960. 95th Amendment Act of 2009 increased this reservation up to 2020. Now, this reservation given to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, it helped us in abandonment of the system of communal representation. It means you will not be represented based on your community, you will be represented under a single umbrella of scheduled caste or a single umbrella of scheduled tribe. Clear? And basis will be population. Now, coming to another important point, what is duration of Rajya Sabha? Remember, first important point, Rajya Sabha is called as upper house. It is also called as Council of States. And I told you what is definition of Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha is representative of state governments. Rajya Sabha was first constituted in the year 1952. Remember one important point, Rajya Sabha is a permanent house. Important point is there. Rajya Sabha is permanent house. It is never abolished. It is never dissolved unlike Lok Sabha, which is dissolved after every 5 years or on the recommendation of Prime Minister by President of India. Now, Rajya Sabha is permanent house. It is not subject to dissolution. Members of Rajya Sabha are elected for 6 years. It means what is the term of member of Rajya Sabha? Their term is 6 years. They are eligible for re-election for many number of times. There is no limitation. 1/3 members of the Lok Sabha retires after every second year. 1/3 members of Rajya Sabha retires after every second years. Then what they did in first batch? First batch was decided by lottery. First batch was decided by lottery. It means when Rajya Sabha was constituted in 1952, in 1954, 1/3 members were retired. Then in 1956, again 1/3 members were retired. So they carried out these things in lottery manner. President can make provision for deciding the order of retirement of members. So who decides? It was decided by President of India. Then about duration of Lok Sabha. See, Lok Sabha is not a continuing member. It is not permanent house. Normal term of Lok Sabha is 5 years only. Normal term of Lok Sabha is 5 years only. Now, when Lok Sabha is dissolved after 5 years. They are dissolved before 5 years. That is before completion of their term. I repeat this line once again. Lok Sabha is dissolved before 5 years, before completion of their term. Or Lok Sabha shall be dissolved by President of India on the recommendation of Prime Minister, or if any political party is not able to prove their majority on the floor of the house, President can dissolve the Lok Sabha. But there are certain conditions when Lok Sabha can continue beyond their normal tenure of 5 years. I repeat once again, there are certain situations wherein Lok Sabha can continue for a term beyond 5 years. What are those conditions? First, during national emergency, the tenure of Lok Sabha can be extended 1 year at a time for any length, for infinite time period. It means, let us say 4 years have been continued for the national emergency, then you will continue the tenure of Lok Sabha for 1 year, again for 1 year, again for 1 year. It means for indefinite time period. It means during national emergency, the tenure of Lok Sabha can be continued for indefinite time period, but 1 year at a time. First point. This extension cannot continue beyond period of 6 months after emergency has ceased to operate. Means once emergency ends, from the date of end, within 6 months, you have to reconvene new Lok Sabha, or you have to reconvene, form a new Lok Sabha, you have to take new elections. It means the term of Lok Sabha cannot continue beyond 6 months once the emergency ceases to operate. President is authorized to dissolve Lok Sabha. Who has the authority to dissolve Lok Sabha? President has the authority to dissolve Lok Sabha on the recommendation of Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers, but certain situations are there where President can use his own discretion. So these are the points about Lok Sabha. Now we are going about, in next lecture, we are going to study membership of the parliament. Till then, keep watching the lecture, keep sharing with your friends, and whatever questions are there, you put these questions either in YouTube comment box, or you put these questions in our app's comment box. Thank you very much. Have a good day.